just, I don't know what. It's going to be great. Please answer the question. Okay, these are the objectives for the day. Keep those in mind. You can also pick them up in the resource, and I'm going to drop in the chat in a little bit. The poll that we're doing is going to ask you if we met our objectives. So take a look, keep those in mind. And I think that's it. I'm going to stop using up your time, and I'm going to turn it over to our great presenters from Expand Ed. All right?
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone feeling?
Pretty good.
I feel like this microphone is very intense, but we'll work our way through it. My name is LaDeja Holly. I am a program director at Expand Ed Schools, managing our learning labs within Career Connected Learning with my colleague that would introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kayshell English. I'm a program manager supporting Expand Ed Schools, focusing primarily with Future Ready High Schools, as well as working on the work-based learning initiatives within the program.
Thank you. So we'll be going over documenting work-based learning hours for CDOS pathways. We definitely want to just check the temperature in the room, as well as those folks who are online. So if you are open to sharing, how are folks feeling? Let's see how folks are feeling to see how much we should be engaging with you all in this space. I think for me, I'm feeling quite sunny, very warm, excited for the week. So I would say I'm about 80, a little bit of clouds because it is a rough morning thus far. But we made it. So I see the sunshine picking through. But for those folks who are online, feel free to drop it in the chat of how you're feeling. And if we have anyone in the space who would like to share, please show of hands.
I see it.
I'm feeling sunny with some flurries.
We're going to get rid of the flurries. Anyone else?
Online, we've got somebody that's warm up. Online, we've got somebody that's warming up.
Awesome, awesome. Anyone else? I'm expecting everyone else is sunny. Feeling warm? Okay, awesome. Oh, we're gonna get you there. Don't worry. And how are you feeling, Kayshell?
I would say it is sunny, but with some flurries as well. Very cold. All right, so we're going to get into the agenda for the day. So today we're going to speak a little bit about the introduction to career development and the occupational studies, which is known as CDOS, CDOS pathway overview, the CDOS option 1 deep dive, option 1 requirements, understanding work-based learning hours, what counts as work-based learning activities, building a work-based learning model at your school, meeting CDOS pathways requirements for 9th to 12th grade, and teacher of record requirements, documenting work-based learning hours to CDOS, connecting to existing experiences to CDOS, and we're going to have some F&Q at the end. Okay, so what is CDOS? CDOS is the Career Development and Occupational Studies. It is designed to recognize students' mastery of career readiness skills defined as NICET CDOS standards, right? So many of you in the room are pretty familiar with that, so I'm glad that you're all here today. All New York City students with or without an IEP are eligible for CDOS. I know in the past this was primarily used for students with IEP, but we do want to make sure that that's very clear. This is open for all New York State students. And please refer to the New York City DOE academic policy for CDOS Credential. We'll make sure that all the links here in the PowerPoint are shared with you after if you don't already have access. But if this is a portal that looks new to you, make sure you take a picture and that you're familiar with this website. Okay, so there's a few different pathways that students can obtain their CDOS, right? So we have the diploma endorsement, which is open to all students, right? So students who successfully completed the requirements for CDOS and meet the requirements for a diploma using Regents exams or other state-approved alternatives. The endorsement is additionally recognized of the students' specialized courses and experiences, right? So those working learning experiences, those CTE experiences. The +1 graduation pathway, again, open to all students who successfully completed the requirements for CDOS, meet the exam requirements for graduation in English language arts, a math, a science, and a social study. Okay. Then we have the superintendent's determination for graduation. This is for extremely rare cases, right? We don't necessarily find that this is the best option for students, but we do find that those students who are struggling, maybe with their ELA or math regents exams, right? Like this is really to help those students out that we know are coming daily, they're trying, but unfortunately, they're not passing that exam. This is just to help you really understand a little bit more of what the +1 graduation pathway can look like, right? As long as the student has their 44 credits, 1 ELA regents, 1 math regents, a science, and 1 history, they'll be able to qualify and receive their CDOS, which will get their diploma, and similar to what the advanced regents diploma would look like. Any questions about that? Okay. So option 1. So this is what we want to focus on today. So it's looking at 216 hours of CTE and or work-based. Right? So this will look like including at least 54 hours of work-based learning. We really want to ensure that the students are able to either achieve their coursework in their CTE hours as well. So we want to make sure that students are clear on the standards as well as your team, right? Your work-based learning coordinator, school, an assistant principal, a guidance counselor, and 1 teacher as well. So we want to ensure that we're very clear on the standards, right? Also, we want to make sure that we're using the employability profile and the annual career plan. Now, that's something that has to be used yearly with each of your students to track their educational plan, but also now their career plan. Option 2 is something that we don't necessarily focus on too much. This is basically an exam that students can take if they're not able to complete their regions, right? We really don't necessarily we try to stay away from this option as much as possible. But again, if there are students that we're finding that can't pass the regions, they need some type of alternative opportunity. Work-based learning activities aren't working for them. Maybe their personal experiences aren't allowing them to make it to a after-school program for them to work or during the school day. So we really look at different assessments that can work for this. And so there's a few different assessments that are able to qualify, and that's what's listed here. So again, we do not recommend this option, but if there are specific students that in rare cases can utilize it, these are the exams that they'll be able to use. So you can take a picture of the slide as well. And I can go back to okay. Okay, so we're going to speak a little bit more about option 1 and 2. So the benefits of option 1 is students are able to gain work experience before graduation. Students gain hands-on experiences that can better prepare them for life after high school. They can gain career readiness skills such as communication, problem solving, professionalism through work experiences, strengthening their resume for future job applications, and give students a work-based learning experience that they can list on their resumes, college applications, job interviews, and future opportunities. Right? So what we're looking for is them to have structured work-based learning activities, right? So we're going to go into a little bit more about what that can look like and how you can set that up for each student. And again, option 2 is a student completes a career assessment exam. Again, we want to note that this is not something that we prioritize. We really want to use this in extremely rare cases, okay?
Okay. Let's see if we turn it off.
See how, yeah, I can project a little louder if needed.
Sorry, those folks on Zoom are receiving an echo. So sorry for them.
Okay, so we're going to go back into CDOS option 1 a little bit more. So again, we want to make sure that the students have their different standards achieved. Career development students will be knowledgeable about the work. And we want to make sure that they're comfortable with their experiences, their aptitudes, their abilities for their future career decisions, right? So these standards are very important for us to meet and ensure that they're on our plan. So, does your school offer CTE coursework?
Does any school offer CTE coursework? Awesome. And what school is that?
Tills Astoria.
I'm sorry?
Tills Astoria.
Okay.
So if you do offer CTE coursework, then this is the route that we would go, right? So 162 hours of CTE coursework and or work-based learning experiences. So that would be at least 54 hours of work-based learning experiences, right? Because we understand with CTE schools that they have to obtain a certain amount of hours. So it usually rounds up to about 54 hours of work-based learning experiences that CTE schools can use for CDOS option 1. Now, if you're not a CTE school, you're able to complete the full 216 hours of work-based learning experience. So what are work-based learning hours? Work-based learning refers to activities that are collaboratively engages employers and schools in providing structured learning experiences for students. Again, I want to preference structured, right? Because I know sometimes we might have a shadowing day or a career day at school, but we want to ensure that these things are planned out and that they're on the student's plan as well, right? Again, that's something that you have to go into yearly. So we want to make sure that anything that you're structurally planning with your team, that it's also on every student's plan. Okay. These experiences focus on helping students develop a broad transferable skills for their post-secondary education and the workplace. Okay, so make a school-based learning more relevant by providing students with opportunities to apply their knowledge and skills in the real-world situations, be supported in school through classroom instruction and supervised work, usually at their work site. So if they're in an SYEP program, or if they're in a Future Ready program or an internship program, we just want to ensure that they also have supervised work experiences. So usually you do assign a DOE teacher to oversee that work-based learning experience to ensure that the student has check-ins, ensure that the student's timesheets are accurately accounted for, and ensure that we're making sure that those students who are in that experience, that we're documenting what they're doing that year and how they're doing it.
I do want to take a moment to check in with the room. So for those folks who did not raise their hand, I would safely assume that those are schools that focuses on work-based learning opportunities within their school. Is anyone open to sharing what sort of activities that they currently do? Because we don't have any questions, but I want to make sure that folks can recognize what's currently existing within other schools. And then also folks in the chat, you also can share a work-based learning opportunity as well. And we can take a look at that to make sure it is amongst the guidelines of what is considered those activities as WBL. So is anyone open to sharing?
His career aspirations.
Please share your name also for the room.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Pellegrino. I'm the College and Career Counselor at Fort Hamilton High School. Currently, we offer a variety of different work-based learning opportunities. We have professional presentations, so where a professional comes into our school and will meet with a group of students that are interested in that field or industry. We have one-day shadowing experiences where a student will go to, let's say, a law firm or a dental office and shadow the employer, ask questions and learn. We have class trips to, for instance, a bank or a real estate agency where they can learn. We have ongoing volunteer partnerships and work experiences, and some are paid, some are not paid, which is, okay. It's great if it's paid, but they know that even if it's not, they're still gaining that professional experience that they need. And then sometimes our students are even hired as a part-time employee after that experience.
Awesome. All great things, all great things. Anyone else? I would also like to shout out Laura as well at Civic Leadership Academy. Those folks worked with New York Hall of Science that ran an apprenticeship program that was 54 hours throughout the school year. So they worked with an organization. Laura did a great job of managing that teacher of record, managing those check-ins, all of those items that we'll go into later on that would be required to make sure that this is checked off as a work-based learning opportunity. So those things that you are mentioning are listed on the activities. If we go to the next slide, we do have a grid. I'm not sure if we can click on the grid to show through those opportunities that we did share. So career fairs, guest speakers, like you mentioned, those apprenticeship programs. We do want to make sure that when you are offering work-based learning opportunities, they are falling amongst this grid and it's intentional with skill building and transferable skills and not those class-based opportunities. Great, thank you so much. So if you can just zoom in a little bit for the activities name, we want to be sure that they are falling along the line of career fairs, guest speakers. You'll see industry tours, I think you mentioned as well. You can skim through that to see what are those opportunities that fall under. I know some things may come up of one of my students is babysitting. Does that qualify? Unfortunately, it does not. So you do want to find opportunities that falls amongst this activities grid that would also be shared to you, your folks as well. Any questions? Does all of this sound redundant? You guys know it? We're feeling good? Okay, awesome, awesome. Great to hear feedback. So here's some questions we have. As I mentioned, I have a student who babysits her younger sister every Tuesday and Thursday. Although it's a schedule, can I count it towards WBL work-based learning hours or CDOS? Unfortunately, you cannot. It is not a structured work-based learning opportunity for those students, and you can't contact the supervisor. You may know the mom of the child, but you cannot count it for the supervisor. I have a student doing an internship at a local community garden, maybe City Parks Foundation, which is an organization folks may be familiar with in the room. Can I count that towards work-based learning hours for CDOS? Absolutely. You can follow up with the organization and you can manage that training overall. I am hosting a career panel during my living environment class. Can my students earn work-based learning, bless you, hours during the course and count towards CDOS? Unfortunately, you cannot. It cannot be a double dip between academic hours and work-based learning hours.
So meeting CDOS pathway requirements for 9th to 10th grade. So this is kind of a chart here where you can start to map out what this would look like in order for your students to achieve the full 216 hours, right? So in 9th grade, you might want to have a career advisory course. We recommend having this in every grade, right? This is going to be the best way to check in with your students and also to complete those plans yearly is to have an assigned teacher and to know that all of your students have an assigned advisory course yearly. This also counts towards their CDOS, right? So they get a certain amount of hours that you can find on that grid that we looked at just previously. Okay, and then again, 10th and 11th grade, it might be a little bit more intense where they're actually doing job shadowing. They might have 15 hours of work-based learning experience. Whereas in 11th grade and 12th grade, they might have 150 hours of SYEP over the summer. This is definitely something that we encourage, that you work very closely with either the work-based learning team at your school if you do not have a SYEP provider. But if you do have a SYEP provider, we ask that you work very hand in hand with them, right? We want to ensure that you know when the students are doing SYEP so that you can get those evaluations, because that is needed to be tracked yearly. For all students that complete SYEP, at the end, you will need to show how they did that and their experience, okay?
How many folks are career-ready schools in this space? And what school is that?
Bronx Center for Science and Math.
Okay, awesome. Any other folks? So we are all familiar with our SYEP provider and quite how it can be during very peak times of that spring semester where it's very tough to get a hold of them. I think what's important for SYEP and their partnership to make sure that you are on track of this pathway for your students is just communicate with them very early. Figure out who that point person is to support you in tracking this information. So I say early on throughout the school year before SYEP does open up, just to communicate with them, build a rapport for you to have a better rapport with them despite just SYEP, but more so of managing this trajectory.
And again, oh, it's a question. Yes.
Where would you recommend tracking it? This year we did it for, for credit, so it was on the transcript, and they worked. But prior years we did not, and we don't know if we're gonna move forward with the credit. Is it just on the portal?
Yes, so you do want to track everything that you're doing on the portal, but you also want to ensure that on the annual career plan for every student and the employability profile is updated yearly as well. Okay, so as long as every student has that, and that should be with your student record, we do say, make sure that you're doing it yearly. We understand that some schools might use different color pens, right, for different years, but we do suggest that you update that yearly for each student if you're able to.
Maybe digitally,
And
did it, so it'd be easier to track.
I'm sorry, you said again, for the hours to count towards CDOS, the students from the employer needs to provide school with, sorry, what was it again? You said there was
it's an evaluation.
an evaluation, okay.
So this is something that you'll have like a reminder, I'm assuming on your portal, and I'll double check
Mhm.
as well, just to let you know. But once you assign that teacher of record, they'll be working very closely with the SYEP provider, and they complete these documents at the end of every SYEP quarter, so they'll give you that automatic.
Okay.
They should, right?
They should, okay.
Right, you should have a good relationship.
So in terms of SYEP, if a student was placed at a site working, teaching young people, you'll communicate with your career ready SYEP provider, just say, hey, would like to connect with their supervisor.
Mhm.
Can you loop me in? And they'll be able to share with you who their direct supervisor is, because they won't know early on in the school year, but they'll know midway third week of SYEP.
Okay, and if they're assigned to our school as their work site, then their supervisor at the school.
Would be ideally,
happens to
maybe
be me,
you.
the one who writes it, okay. Got it, thank you.
So just to clarify, regular SYEP cannot count towards this because there's no teacher of record, or?
So regular so this is open to all students again. So we're working with students individually to help them meet what they need to graduate. So let's say the student that you're working with to ensure that they receive the CDOS pathway, you would just want to make sure that when they do SYEP, you have some form of record. Okay, so let's say if they completed it in 9th grade and you didn't have a teacher of record assigned, right, when you were on that team or whatever happened, we would then have to figure out a way to get those documents, which is usually easy because the SYEP providers tend to stay with the high schools, right? So let's say if you worked with Children's Aid, usually that's the SYEP provider that stays with your high school. Traditionally, most of, the city of your high school will be fine. And if not, it will change, and so you'll know who to reach out to.
But that would be a peak during, I would say, 11th to 12th grade.
Yeah.
But we have one more question and then we'll get to you.
I'm a little confused. So when we're asking for the evaluation, where are we putting the evaluation?
You would keep them with their student records and their employability profile in their annual career plan.
And the employability profile, is that what we put into stars?
That's not something that's
It's like they shared like a Google Doc that you can use. Stars doesn't.
We have all of the forms hyperlinked, but it's not useful if we walk through every form. It's a Google Doc, but we can share each form as a PDF for you to have.
Okay.
But what's important is to have that one person that works closely with whatever teacher record at your school to monitor the progression of a student throughout their school year. So we're saying that it starts as early as 9th grade to start that conversation. When we start talking about SYEP, those students have to be 16 plus by July 1st to have that hands-on experience. So those students would be 11th and 12th grade.
Because at our school, we do SYEP and we do the winter youth as well.
Oh, work-based learning. I mean,
Work, learn, grow.
Work, learn, grow. That's a new name now. I think I can't remember what.
But that still counts. Both of them do still count. Okay.
And they also got a college credit.
Yeah, for CUNY.
Mhm.
So that's not considered double dipping.
So when you are able to receive a college credit, we do like to be cautious. However, we find that it does work, right? It depends on how the program is created, right? So similarly to what LaDeja was sharing earlier, we had an options program for expanded schools where students were able to work and train to receive the credit. But then when they go into their apprenticeship, that's just their work-based learning hours. So it should be a very clear distinction between how they're receiving the credit and how they're receiving their work-based learning hours, so that it's not considered double dipping. Question?
Yeah, my question was just going to be about the ninth grade. I know there you have the 216 hours happening in the older grades, but you did mention if some of the activities come off that list, we could track those and it would similarly be through the employability profile, but doing it with a ninth grader. Absolutely. Monitoring those hours. Okay.
And on the grid, you'll be able to see specific activities you can do with ninth grade.
Right.
It's usually the annual career plan, and students are still able to receive a certain amount of hours for that. It might be a career fair. It might be a panel.
Yeah.
So you can definitely be strategic starting in the ninth grade, but we do know usually schools tend to focus towards more the 11th and 12th grade because that's when students tend to work. All right. Any other questions?
How we're doing with the chat?
They're very quiet
Okay.
on the chat.
Hi, chat. Teach me, like you say Chapman, so okay.
If you have any questions or things come up, we're always available. Expanded has been working very closely with New Vision, and so we're here to support you however possible.
So we did mention, this came on topic of the role of teacher of record. Does this sound familiar to folks by a show of hands? I don't see them high enough, so I think we're missing something.
Sort of.
So when students are engaging in work-based learning opportunities, a teacher, any certification, depending on what it is aligned with. So if the course is aligned with a mathematical credit, that student must align, that teacher must align with that curriculum. They must evaluate the work-based learning experience using the activity grid, which we've seen, to ensure that this experience can be used as work-based learning. As I mentioned, you want to be sure that you are connecting those experiences that are currently happening within your schools, that it currently aligns. We did hear some great things in this space, so I think you all are on the right track. As I mentioned, depending on if the organization, so I did shout out Laura, who did work with New York Hall of Science. They created a curriculum that was aligned with this work-based learning course, which was a hands-on experience teaching young people how to facilitate projects, science projects specifically in a classroom. So what that school did was find a teacher of record that would be aligned with the course for that teacher of record to support NISI in that student's experience. Does that make sense? I like setting examples and making that connection so folks can fully understand. During that experience, that teacher of record is conducting check-ins. We mentioned like how we check in the progression of the student. We want to be sure whoever's managing the trajectory of the student's high school experience understands who's doing what throughout that school year. So that teacher of record to this course is conducting regular check-ins with students during the school hours. So if this experience is after school, Tuesday and Thursday, 4 to 6 at NISI, when a student come back, this teacher of record is conducting check-ins with individual students based on who's participating to make sure that they are on track and they're tracking the progress of this student. After the experience, you'll be collaborating with students to complete the eligibility profile and annual career plan. So as we mentioned, there's a ton of PDFs and documents that will support you in managing the trajectory of these students. Any questions on the teacher of record?
I was looking at the grid that you guys provided with different ones, and I was noticing that there's a way that the kids can gain hours by volunteering or doing community service. Do activities like that need a teacher of record as well?
That's correct. Any work-based learning opportunities need the teacher of record.
Structured. We always want to think structured activity, right? Because if a student goes home over the weekend and says, I donated a, dog toy to the ASPCA and played with the dogs on the weekend, we need a way to say that the school oversees this program, the school can agree and also verify that the student was there at this time and that they're clocking in and that they're meeting the specific standards, right? We do want to ensure that every experience that they're meeting a standard. Okay. How do you document the work-based learning hours towards CDOS? So on the New Visions portal, documenting the work-based learning hours on the New Visions portal is recommended, right? So everyone here is clear on how to do that, right? Yeah. Student documents. So we want to ensure that we have the eligibility profile, the annual career plan, the CDOC form. So we want to ensure that all student documents are being tracked and that they are staying with the students throughout their entire experience at your school. ATS, so you're able to exam override or a diploma endorsement. The +1 graduation pathway, add an exam code, right? So depending on the pathway that you're going to pursue, you will need to know a few different ATS codes. So that's what we're listing here. Again, you can take a photo of the slide. We will ensure that you have this. And if you have any questions, we'll be available to walk you through this as well.
We have a question in the chat. So just to clarify, the teacher on record is separate from the employer evaluation. Can you explain the role that each play? That's the first question. And then we have another one.
If I can go back to the teacher of record slide as well. Deja, did you want to take a stab at that or you want?
Yeah. Can you repeat it?
Yes. Just to clarify, the teacher on record is separate from the employer evaluation. Can you explain the role that each play?
Yeah, so the teacher of record would be someone within the realm of your school who would be managing and making that connection of whatever that student is doing. The employer evaluation is that supervisor on site or overseeing the experience. However, if it is an in-school opportunity, I will have to double check to see if that can be the same person, especially if it aligns. But I would just need to confirm. Is that helpful? Or if anyone's in this space, I think we're all learning from each other, that maybe has doubled it to say, I'm a teacher of record, and they also was the evaluator as well. Is anyone familiar with that?
I feel like it tends to be separate just because it tends to be a lot of work, right? We don't want to overwhelm everyone or anyone at your schools as well. So if you do have a program, unless maybe it's a career fair, right? You might be able to have one teacher of record overseeing that program and then they are completing the evaluations with the students at the end because that's very low touch. But you might not have a teacher of record actually leading an internship experience at Google, right? And then also supporting with timesheets and everything else and being a DOE teacher. We don't think that that's feasible.
Yeah, the person on chat said that answers their question, but Emily has something to add.
No, I wanted to just name something, which is that for some of you, you guys are creating work-based learning experiences for your students, small and large, right? And not all of them are experiences that you're trying to use for CDOS pathway for your students. And it's this funny thing that we're sort of asking you to do is like hold in one sort of container, building a bunch of experiences and exposure for students that might happen during the school day or might happen out of school. And then also putting a separate hat on to say like, I'm trying to build out CDOS. Right. So a lot of what Expand Data is sharing is really best practice, right? To have a really structured work-based learning program that you can leverage for CDOS pathway. But it's not all going to be applicable to you for each experience that you create. I just kind of want to put that out there if that helps a little bit, sort of think about like, in which ways do you really want to formalize a set of experiences and in which ways might you just have a set of informal that you're not going to leverage for a CDOS graduation pathway for students. Yeah, Nicole.
Just to clarify, so for it to count as a CDOS experience, does it have to be outside of the like work hours, the school hours?
It just has to not be part of a credited classroom experience. Yeah.
Because like my thought process is if we have a career fair during the day versus at the end of the day, does one count and not the other? Or do they both still count? They both still count. Okay, thank you.
But keep that in mind when thinking about those opportunities.
Especially work-based learning opportunities, definitely.
We have one more question. The student documents are just kept in-house, right? Are they uploaded anywhere at some point?
So they are traditionally stored with the student records in your main office, but some schools do have systems where they upload things online for their advisory classes, just so that things are more organized. We do also find that the New Visions portal is very helpful as well, because you're able to track, align, and ensure that things that you're working on can thoroughly align. So we want to make sure that you're comfortable where you're tracking and keeping things as well. So definitely you can upload things to New Visions. You can ensure that if you want to create something internal for your school that you're doing so, but mostly it's your students' records, right? So if your school is audited, it should be easily accessible, right? And we know how New York City Public Schools is when it comes to online things. They want to be able to find it in hand at the office and tied to the student's name and OSIS number, right? How are we feeling? I know we're at 10 o'clock, so I want to make sure we're good before moving on. We're good?
Okay. How can we connect existing, I think. Okay. How can we connect existing experiences to CDOS? There's been a lot of questions about SYEP. So here's an example. So 25 students at the High School of Innovations are participating in SYEP in summer 2026, and the school is interested in logging in the work-based learning hours towards CDOS. So this would mean, as we've spoke about, the school admin, the school would need to manage assigning a teacher of record before the start of the experience, which is July 1st. So a teacher of record would need to be assigned to this experience. After the experience, you must document the work-based learning hours on New Visions portal. I'm not familiar with that, but I'm sure New Visions can share a little bit more about that portal. But essentially, you would want to connect with the SYEP provider to make sure that, you know, you have an understanding of where students are participating during the summer and make sure it is aligned with that guide that we shared. So for this teacher of record, they'll be creating a course aligning with the experience. So again, we'll share these supportive documents for you to see how it aligns with the opportunity. As I mentioned before, this teacher of record must conduct those check-ins throughout the summer. We recommend at least one. However, that can also be more check-ins for those students who do require more support throughout the summer. And then again, completing the eligibility profile and managing the pathway and the track of the trajectory of the student from those grades. So if the student is in 11th grade, they're participating in SYEP, you want to make sure that you're tracking all of these opportunities. And then as we mentioned, working with the SYEP provider, we know that can be quite difficult sometimes during the peak seasons, but you want to make sure that you're communicating with them early on for them to share the number of hours that students are working. And this can change throughout the summer. It can range anywhere from 15 to 23. But students can work up to 25 hours each week. And those SYEP providers are supporting with that training plan for those students in the summer. Any questions?
Yeah.
So I have a question. So if we do not assign the teacher of record before this date, can we not do it? Is that a done deal, or is that a very strict deadline?
It is a very strict deadline for that. Just because you will want to be sure that it is aligning and it will count towards the later you wait, the more difficult it could be.
Okay.
But it's highly recommended that this is assigned, or you have a rough idea of who
Okay.
would be that teacher of record. But not waiting until the course is done is like, oh, let's make you the teacher of record of that experience that happened summer 2025.
Yeah, I understand. So for instance, like our work, learn, grow students, right?
Just started.
Just started this week. So if we started this week, then it's okay to assign.
Yep,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
And just a quick question, how do you assign the CUNY versus the other work-based learning portion experience? Because we did have a question here.
We haven't.
Okay.
So this year, we're really trying to be more intentional about CDOS.
Yeah.
We've actually done option 2 pretty much only. So now we're trying to move to option 1.
Okay.
And do a better job of tracking internally. So
Awesome.
we've been doing with WLG for years, but we have not tracked.
Okay, we're not
First
focusing on option 2 today, just a
Copy.
reminder.
I thought we like options.
Maybe that's a question for another time.
I can just give my disclaimer, which is that because we're talking in this space and this PLC about creating a 9 through 12 arc, really building strong, structured work-based learning experiences and strengthening structures, we focus on option 1 because it's best aligned with building out that 9 through 12 continuum. It is not to say that schools that find this advantageous have built-in structures, sit students for the exam, particularly when you are really ensuring that students can graduate. Like, great, right? But this space is more about building the other structures to support the 9 through 12 continuum. So no shade at all to doing that. We just don't spend a lot of time supporting those systems and structures in this space. However, like, please find each other and talk about things that help you with everything, including work-based learning and helping young people graduate. Equally important, and we want you to leave with the resources you need to accomplish both of those goals. So feel free to network within this space, whatever is most important. Allison, thanks for making sure I can say that piece too.
And I'll add to that, right? And being a New York City public school student, it's very important for students to have these opportunities, because what we're finding, especially with the future ready high schools, is our students aren't ready for the workforce, right? So the students between the ages of 18 and 24, they're not prepared to sit in a regular internship program at this time. So, and I oversee internship for Future Ready for Education and Human Services. And I'm letting you know now, like, we need to do this together as a partnership. That's why we're here to support you and help you build out programs and to make it more fun and exciting. We understand that you're focusing on the academics, but what we're noticing is that if we're not able to be intentional with the CDOS pathway, it can affect the community worse than what we want, right? So please just work with us. If you need help, we're here to support you. We know that it's very tedious, but when you have a very supportive team, we find that that's where it's most successful, right? We hear some great stories in the rooms about things that are working. And once it's embedded into your school's culture, it's second nature, right? You just really want to ensure that the folks that you have on the team are just as passionate, right? We don't say, I wouldn't say find a school aide and throw them on the team, right? If they're not able to or have the time. But you really want to identify those people in the building that care about students, that want students to do better, that spend their time already after school to support students. Those are the folks that you really want to identify and try to get on board. Okay.
Do we have any questions? Okay. We also have another example of how can you connect existing experiences to CDOS. So here's an example. School of Career Readiness is interested in starting an internship program for the students to earn work-based learning hours towards CDOS. When surveying students, the school found that many students are already participating with work-based learning opportunities. So this also comes up of how late can we onboard a teacher of record? But once you know that this is happening, you want to connect with the employer to discuss and evaluate the experience to make sure that experience falls under that guide that we shared. So once you identify that, you're checking that off. You then want to, so that's step 1. You then want to quickly go to step 2, which is assign a teacher of record to that experience. Quickly after, you'll create a syllabus. So we want to be sure once we identify the experience, we then want to have that teacher of record assigned and create a syllabus aligning with this experience. Step 4, we want to be sure that this teacher of record understand what they're expected to do. So conduct those regular check-ins. We recommend at least one throughout the experience, and just make sure experience is tracked throughout for attendance as well as their progression throughout the experience. After that, you'll go back to the employer and supervisor. So keep in mind that employer and supervisor, you'll either be working with SYEP or another employer, but you want to complete what that training plan is, and they'll support you with that. You'll go down and making sure that you're supporting, the teacher of record is supporting students to complete the employability profile and annual career plan again. And then we're going back up to that school admin, and after the experience, just documenting those work-based learning hours on the New Visions portal. So what we're seeing here is that step 1 is not just happening during one phase. Step 2 is not happening after the fact. So we want to be sure that we are working as a team, as Kay-Shell mentioned, that we're all working together to make this happen. So if we have a school admin that's looped out, or we just had a school admin transition out, we want to be sure that we're updating them with the teacher of record and the experience of what students are currently doing. Does that make sense? So if we have one missing piece, things are lost, things are not documented, you're not sure what happened during 10th grade. So we want to be sure that whoever is removed from this team to make sure that these students who are doing this experience is looping someone in during this transition. That could be very difficult in working with schools, but this is how we can make sure that this is happening. It's cohesive and students are having an amazing experience. Any questions? So here's some frequently asked questions. So how do I make my advisory work-based learning reflection class high quality? So we do have other PDFs that will be shareable for you to have and manage within your schools. As well, we keep mentioning that employability profile in the annual career plan. All of these are tangible documents that you will have. For the teacher of record, we also have check-in guides for you to use, but we want to make sure check-ins are happening. Some students I check in with, I'm like, hey, like, did you check in with folks about your experience in schools? They're like, no, miss, I've only spoken to you. So we want to make sure that this piece is happening, and we are sharing those sample guides for you to have. If career focused guest speakers or field trips are happening during the class time, we heard a question here. I see you smiling. Can students earn work-based learning hours towards CDOS? So it's no. So again, it's about what time you're structuring it. So let's just structure it after school. Any questions? Hey. Most of the questions we've had, I think we've answered them. We went through a lot of examples. I think the last 10 minutes was for any questions we had in the chat or any questions in the room. But I'm not sure if our presentation was extremely thorough, that we didn't hear from many folks. But the floor is yours for you to share, receive any feedback, ask any questions. How are folks feeling?
Well, what's a concern that you're having with this option? What's something that you're worried about or need support in right now?
So I'm concerned about what I'm understanding to be like, let's say, we monitor the CDOS hours for all our students. So that can be overwhelming in itself, because not every piece aligns in sense of like maybe another teacher that's not communicating with us is doing work-based learning, and we have to figure out how to track that. And then we have to look at, they're doing this stuff maybe independently. They're not communicating with us. And then I'm looking at, we have to do employability profiles for each of these children. And then we have to do like the career plan, easy. You know what I mean? Like we've got that. But like tracking all that and then having to get a teacher of record on that and then write that up, I just feel like that's really taxing. I'm not sure even how to start.
That's really honest and transparent, and I feel like that's probably how majority of the folks are feeling in the room, especially if this is new to you. One, I would say you should not be doing this alone, right? And you should definitely have a team, but it also sounds like for you, it might be more helpful to even meet with the entire like teaching staff, because if different teachers are hosting different types of work-based learning activities, you should know, right? Like the guidance counselor, the assistant principal, as well as the work-based learning coordinator, and then a teacher of record that can sit on this team, you all should know what's going on in the school. And if not, then we want to ensure that the entire school population and all the staff know that anything that teachers are planning in advisory or maybe in these small specialized classes, that they have to let you know in advance. If this planning takes place in August, right, before you're coming into school, before school starts, it makes the most sense. If you create a plan that you can stick to for every student for every year, then it's easier. You know that in ninth grade, all the students are going to have advisory and they're going to have their career day. That's it. No teacher can do anything additional because that's what we have on plan. That's what we have on record. 10th grade, they'll be able to do these different activities and they'll be able to start to get 15 work-based learning hours. 11th grade, they're doing SYEP and they're also in their advisory, right? So we want you to plan this out early so that when you're in the school year and when things are tough and you're in the trenches, that you feel like this is manageable. But the only way to do that is to sit down with the team and to come up with a plan that can be sustainable. So not for you to do all this by yourself.
Wow. Yeah. Because this is my first year doing it, and because we don't necessarily communicate in that manner, it just does become that way.
That's why we're here, right?
And
We
then-
have new
And then
vision.
some new things, let's be honest, like some things that were not planned in August, let's say, kind of come through, and then that kind of slips through the cracks too.
You have to have a team, your principal, your assistant principal, your work-based learn, are you the work-based learning coordinator? I forget the work-based learning coordinator. You have to be a united front. Your first year is going to be difficult. It's okay to have these nerves. What matters is that you're going to work together to figure out the solutions, right? So understanding that you're here today, we know that you need to support making a plan. So when we go into the breakout sessions, we can support you with that, right? So you feel more confident.
That was a good pitch, Annabelle and others. For folks who are really wanting to dig into like, how do I operationalize some of this at my school? Where do I start? What do I prioritize? One of the breakout sessions is the CDOS deeper dive. We'll stay in Grand here for that. And Kayshel and LaDeja will be with us. So we'll be able to sort of like group by like, okay, here's the thing I want to try and figure out. Let's get into small discussion groups so we can talk it through.
We have a question in the chat. Also, I launched a poll to do an evaluation. If you're online, please fill it out. But here's the question. We don't know how to upload any of these documents into New Visions, the New Visions portal. Do you have anyone that we can contact to get those resources or do a walkthrough?
Okay, I will answer it as like a two-parter. So just to clarify, the New Visions data portal can be used as a place to document your work-based learning experiences and give you a count of the hours. So you can sort of see, like, I'm trying to get to 216 hours. What has been documented for my students already? In terms of the documents related to the employability skills profile, the annual career plan, a training plan, those are documents, as the expanded ladies talked about, that you will have and keep in your student records. You do not need to upload them anywhere. In the case where you are using these hours to graduate students through CDOS option 1, there is the chance, right, that in your superintendent's district, they will be auditing, sort of evaluating, like, do you have the documents in place for these students' hours and experiences? And in that case, you want to have them with the student's file so that you can show them at that point, but you do not need to upload them anywhere. Hopefully that clarifies that. My understanding too, if you guys could check for me, for the employability skills profile, do you need one for every single experience? Or when I read the policy, it was like you need at least one for the student's experience in 11th and 12th grade.
In the end, correct.
Okay.
The annual plan has to be completed yearly.
Yes. But an employee-based skills profile, so if you have a student doing like 150 SYP hours, for example, in 11th grade, you could choose to do the employability skills profile for that experience. And then that requirement is done. You've sort of checked that off. Yeah, other questions for the group, for Expand Ed? Anything in the chat?
Nothing more in the chat.
Okay.
It was a pleasure speaking to you all. We'll be in a breakout room. Again, my name is LaDeja Holly, K-Shell English. We can share our contact information, connect afterwards to support you the best way we can alongside New Visions.
And we've also listed our VP, who's not here unfortunately today, so we came to support Monia Salam, who oversees this work and is very passionate, dedicated, and has worked with many of the schools here already. So if you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out to Monia or ourselves or anyone at New Visions.
Thank you guys so much.